In October the 4th, 1995, the first ever Neon Genesis Evangelion episode was aired in Japan. Since then, after 26 TV episodes, 5 movies, 5 mangas, one 5-volume light novel and several video games, Hideki Anno and his team has finally released at midnight of September the 13th, 2021, the last movie of the rebuild tetralogy, Evangelion 3+1, Thrice Upon a Time. This movie got released in Japan back in March, and has reportedly made over 10 billion yens in box office since, putting it up on the list as one of the most important Japanese full-feature movies ever made. It is a day to remember and celebrate, as for Anno has delivered on his promise to end the story that took almost 20 years to make, because he did start working in this storyline back in 2002. The Evangelion story he wanted to tell, as he said back then, premiered in September 2007, and the last one being Reveal Q in November 2012. Thus, we had to wait for 9 years for the conclusion of this story. How did I watch this movie? I watched it with the original Japanese audio with English subs, just as I do with all the anime that I watch. I do plan to rewatch it with Spanish subs, which usually regarding Evangelion have been historically more accurate with the script. That did change however with Reveal Q, in which both subs were pretty much the same. Who is this movie for? Well, this movie is for EVA fans. It's not for everyone to enjoy. EVA fans will get it, and they will be able to make up their minds either if they loved it or hated it. My point being is that if you did not like Evangelion or you are just indifferent to it going in, this movie won't be changing your mind or perspective to the franchise, being this one of the many challenges that this movie needed to address. Turned the very much complex story of Neon Genesis Evangelion into one more accessible to broader audiences. Another challenge that this movie had to address was putting an end to the divisiveness that brought Reveal Q 9 years ago to the fandom. Now, it's fair to say that even though Q did receive mixed reviews from both critics and fans back then, it has grown in many in the community, and many of its detractors started to embrace it for what it is. So, is this movie as divisive as Q was back then? In my opinion, it's not. We all knew going in that this was going to be the direct sequel to Q, and the story will pick up where we left it 9 years ago. No one should have been expected a different product this time around. There is, however, some detractors that have made strong arguments against the film, but not the same way nor as many as in 2012. Now let's talk about the movie itself. Bear in mind that this is only my early impressions. I have watched the film just once, and I plan to rewatch it at least one more time before my full review that I expect to post tomorrow. Also, I will be keeping it as spoiler-free as possible. So there will be things that I will be deliberately omitting in this video because of, well, spoilers. First, let's talk about the things that I liked. Overall, the movie is F-U-N. Fun. Yes, this is a legitimately fun movie to watch. Even in its darkest sequences, the movie is so entertaining and fluent that its long runtime can hardly be noticed. It also has a ton of jokes, and funny ones too. For the past 6 weeks I have watched the End of Evangelion from start to finish at least a dozen times for my End of Evangelion Closer Look series. That movie, although a masterpiece, is hard to watch. Way too dense, dark. It doesn't have a single joke in its 90 minutes or so. In comparison, 3+1 is hilarious, and the rewatchability factor is very high. Now, don't get me wrong, this film has also many dark psychological sequences, but even those are lighter and easier to digest. The movie does have its problems though, and we are going to talk about them later in this video. Now, I can tell you about the best part of this film hands down, and that is the OST. Shiro Sagisu's work is impeccable. The way he is able to remix the classic Evangelion OST with new and original sounds and pacing is masterful. I also want to make mention of Utada's original song for the movie, titled One Last Kiss, which was a commercial success heading into the movie, making many of the top charts worldwide since it was released in December. A beautiful song that mixes perfectly with the spirit of the film. I still like better the end of Evangelion comes to her thought, mainly because it was written by Anno himself. But One Last Kiss will definitely be the song for the reveal, Legacy. The film has also one of the best animations I've ever seen, for the exception of some poor CGI in the third act. When watching it on my big screen, I could not believe that the film looked even better than Demon Slayer Mugen Train, a film that I watched on theaters back in April. Does it feel revolutionary though? Well, I wouldn't go that far, but I do feel that this is the pinnacle of current 2D animation. There is no anime currently available that looks better than Thrice Upon a Time. I cannot even imagine how good this film looks in IMAX format, as it was intended to be shown. Maybe someday in the future we will have a special screenings outside Japan to live the full experience. So the film sounds great and looks great. Let's move on with some of the characters. I did have to consider a lot on who was my favorite character in this movie, because I couldn't believe it myself. But there is no doubt in my mind that Shinji Ikari is my favorite character. Unbelievable, right? If you've been in the channel for a long time, you should know by now that Shinji is not one of my favorite characters. Actually, it's one of the characters that I dislike the most, and my reason is that he never gets to be the hero that the story deserves him to be. I understand the characterization how Anno was trying to tell a personal story and all that, and that is the main reason why I can tolerate him, and being able to do it all these years. And even though he has a very weak first act on this movie, Shinji rises to that hero I was expecting him to be, and it was amazing. Love Shinji in this movie, I cannot believe I would say that today. The second character that I liked the most was Mari. Now, Mari is unique to the Reveal tetralogy. She doesn't appear in the original story, had a cameo on Sadamoto's epilogue chapter in the manga, and appeared also in Yamashita's anime, but it was different on both stories. Going into the movie, one of the biggest question marks that I had was how they were going to address the Mari situation. She did not appear in the first movie, and to tell you the truth, she was merely a background character in the subsequent presentations. So it was very important for Mari to get some character development with an arc explaining motivations and background, and we finally got it. Well, kinda. A very complex one, but at least it's there. Mari's treatment on this film was very high. She appeared in almost all crucial sequences and played a very important role in the plot overall. Also, Mari is the one that brings most of the jokes, at least the good ones, in this movie. It didn't even bother me that she was portrayed as the stereotypical anime girl with bouncing boobs and cheerful personality, because to tell you the truth, this is the kind of character that Evangelion never had before, and is so refreshing and fun to watch in this setting. Finally, Gendo Ikari. For the first time in more than 20 years, I can say that I finally fully understand why Gendo is doing what he's doing. Never before was clearer to me. Gendo Ikari did have almost a full episode in Neon Genesis Evangelion, episode 21, which is one of my favorite ones. That was a background episode in which Koso was kidnapped by Cele and tells the story of Yui, Gendo getting an Aoko Akagi Raid 1 and of course the three old friends from college. That episode was the best one we had so far to try to understand Gendo's persona, and even there he was portrayed as a cold calculating mastermind who controlled everyone around him. In this movie, and I cannot get into details, how his background is told is from a very different approach, showing us the humanity of the character, and it's so well done that I actually felt empathy for the man for the first time ever. There are other things that I liked and enjoy about the film, but it includes the plot, so I will leave them for my spoilers video. I will tell you, however, about a few things I did not like. The first act for me is the weakest part of the film. Now, I will be making my whole case on my next video, but for me it felt very weird. Like Miyazaki meets The Walking Dead in an Evangelion setting. That's how it felt to me. I am not saying that Miyazaki's work is bad, after all, Anno comes from the same school, but when I watch all those Ghibli films, I know what I'm signing up for, and I appreciate them for what they are. And I also understand what Anno was trying to say in this act. It is pretty clear, but it just didn't work for me. Don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that it's bad, nor that all of it is a waste of time. What I'm saying is that it doesn't feel part of the movie as a whole. There are a couple of things that I can rescue and did like about this act though, but I will leave them for my next video. However, my whole perception is that the stories that are told in this act could have been delivered more effectively. The next thing I didn't like was Rei Kyu's portrayal. For the past 9 years, this has been the Rei for the revealed storyline, and you can notice it on the merch basically. The Black Pluxus Rei has been predominant on marketing, and Kara has profited a lot from that. Rei Kyu's portrayal in this film starts very strong. I cannot say it's original though. It's the typical fish out of the water story, and it's not the first time that Rei has been put in that role, so it quite fits her right. Feels familiar. However, how Anno treated Rei Kyu is in my opinion the most insulting thing in this film. I will be making my whole case on my next video, but it really upset me. Finally, Asuka. One of the biggest challenges that this movie had to address is the type of Asuka we were going to get. If either the heroine Soryu from the original story, or a brand new personality inspired by that same Asuka. Asuka's portrayal in the second movie is quite embarrassing. It does have her moments though, but her motivations, especially regarding the relationship with Shinji, were never very well developed. And in the third movie, Asuka barely makes an appearance, as for she only does so in the first act, and at the climax of the third act. Now, I was hoping that Asuka would get more screen time this time around, which she kind of does. And in my opinion, the best Asuka the whole reveal timeline is the one in the first act. I was truly enjoying her portrayal there. After all, I love Asuka. But then something happened later that simply left me not caring about her anymore. Yes, I simply stopped caring for Asuka at all after some reveals. However, Anno does play a lot with nostalgia in this movie, and it's hard not to like those particular sequences, but again, it's just that. Nostalgia. What about Misato? Well, Misato is my waifu, man. Right there, see? My waifu, okay? She's my favorite character of the franchise, and once again, she's up to the circumstances. She did not disappoint and behave as expected. However, there are a couple of new things that enriches her legacy overall and kind of changes her motivations, but I will leave them for my next video. I will be addressing the other characters, plot and sequences on my next full spoilers video, so stay tuned for that. Yes or no question, did I like how the movie ended? Well, yes. Not the ending that I was hoping for though, but was good enough given the problems on the plot overall. In conclusion, I can say that Evangelion Thrice Upon a Time is a film made for fans of both the franchise and Hideki Anno himself. A movie that needed to address a bunch of challenges left by its prequels. Most of these challenges are addressed in the best way possible, and many of these film weaknesses came from those that preceded it. Nevertheless, it is a very strong end to this story, a fun, enjoyable experience. It is not by any means as revolutionary as the original story was, but an adequate one for current times and fans. In my humble opinion, the best revealed film of the four. Guys, thank you all so much for watching. I publish Evangelion and other anime content each week. If you don't want to miss the next episode, be sure to subscribe and hit that little bell notification button. If you have already, but you still feel that are missing out on the notifications, consider to follow me on Twitter at MixSans or join my Discord for free, where I provide daily updates on the channel, Evangelion news, and current and classic anime insights and discussions. You will find the link on the description section down below. And as always, I wish you all a wonderful day.